Good morning. Welcome to this month's webinar. Thank you for joining. I have with me today Barrett Kapler, one of my fellow account managers here from AcroMat. So appreciate you taking some time out of your Tuesday to attend. The subject for the webinar this month is on tips and ideas on how we can maximize the investment we make in anti-fatigue mats. So we've got some information to share with you on some of those. We'll run through the following agenda as we go through today. Just a couple of things, I guess, before we start. First of all, if you have questions as we go, feel free to put those in, and we'll answer all the questions together as we get towards the end, in view of keeping on track with time and everything. So feel free to put the questions in and we'll address those together at the end. So the agenda for the session. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about mats as an investment and what that means and how we can maximize that. We're going to have a little bit of fun with the next one, some comparisons between mats and car tires, something we often talk about here at AcroMat. And then we're going to be sharing some cleaning tips, follow that up with some tips on mat care. We'll address those questions, get to next steps and close at the end. There is also going to be a link added in the chat for you today so that you can register for a free gift as a thank you for attending. So that should be on the chat before the end, and feel free to get your choice of free gift put in there as well. So with that, we'll get started.
So yeah, this first one here, why do we use anti-fatigue mats? They help prevent injuries, they improve employee performance, as well as employee retention. It shows that you're looking out for your workforce and want to keep the employees as safe as when they come in and when they leave. It also reduces absenteeism and staff turnover.
That's good. So I'm sure we're all well aware of mats being used widely in any standing work environments, applications, and they're a great way to help show that your company is looking out for your employees and you want them to leave at the end of the day just as safe as when they came in. So the next one here is, why do we invest in quality matting rather than short-term matting? So there's a lot of different types of matting out there, and when we're talking about short-term, could be a lot of different things, but for this purposes of this presentation, we'll think of it in terms of like maybe a thin PVC foam roll mat, something like that, that's pretty inexpensive. And along with that, it has a short life expectancy. So the mats that we make are designed to be more of a 3 to 8 year life product, compared to something that's more like a 6-month product. So why should we invest in quality rather than those shorter term products? Well, we've got a few points on that. Number one, the life expectancy is a lot greater. So it can be up to 6 to 16 times longer than those shorter term products, which means there's obviously a much better return on investment if you're able to get that much more life out of them. The other thing we find regularly with the shorter term mat products is they don't get replaced as often as they should. And that can lead to a lot of safety issues. It can lead to, poor performance from the mat itself. It's not really doing what it's supposed to do. So that can be some issues to be mindful of there. The extra safety hazards that are caused. The other point too, if you are replacing them more regularly as they're designed to, you may find an issue with just the labor from physically replacing matting every 6 months can be quite time consuming and quite a strain. And as we all know, labor's in high demand at the moment. So something to be mindful of as well. If you order just a mat that fits and it's going to be there for 3 to 8 years, that's a lot better than having to replace it every 6 months. If you do replace them often as well, you've got to also be mindful of the fact that there's a lot of waste created with that. So environmental impacts come into play there if you're disposing of matting regularly. And then we also find too that the employees know when they're more of a shorter term product that they're not adding a lot of value There's not much difference from being on a thin mat as it is on the cement. Obviously, anything's better than cement. We understand that, but something that creates a lot more value for the employees is important. Another point, they often come in rolls, and you buy a full roll and you cut the piece you need, and the rest of it gets put in storage. So you can actually be spending money on matting that's actually not being utilized by just being in storage on a roll somewhere. So rather than that, we recommend getting a mat to fit and just ordering the piece you need. So a few tips on why to invest in the quality type rather than the short term.
And just like any other investment, you want to maximize your return on it. So just looking out and cleaning the mats is a good way to get the full life expectancy out of them.
So next up, we're going to jump into our analogy about mats and car tires. So this one's kind of a fun one, we think, but we talk about it often here. And how are mats and car tires alike? Well, a few things on that. Number one, both have a life expectancy. So when you buy a car tire, you're aware of how many miles you can expect to get out of it. The same with mats. There's a life expectancy for each different type of mat that's available. Both can be repaired to extend life, and that's actually something that's sometimes maybe overlooked in the mat world. We know what it's like to take our tire in that has a flat, and they put a repair in there, and it brings it back to life again, and you're good to go. The same can be true of anti-fatigue mats. They can be repaired, so you're not having to reinvest in the whole thing. You can actually just do a repair and extend the life. Another one that's also often not really mentioned or thought about is that both can be rotated. So we're familiar with the concept of rotating our tires to maximize the useful life of them. And the same can be true with anti-fatigue mats. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail later on. And then the other one as well is that both can be irreparably damaged if you use them when they are in need of repair. So something to think about there as well. If you drive on a flat, it will damage the sidewalls and you'll no longer be able to use that tire for anything, and you'll have to replace it. The same is true with a mat. If it's being used and there's visible damage, it can lead to something where it's irreparable, and then you'll have to replace the whole thing. Whereas by actually getting in there, stopping the car, getting the flat off and getting it fixed right at the time is the best way to maximize the useful life of that.
And then they're both designed to keep you safe. But if you use them past their useful life, a lot of times you'll run into issues, safety hazards, trip hazards, whatnot. And just like tires, you plan on replacing them when they wear out. So you should have the same plan in place for the anti-fatigue mats. And there's different types of tires for different environments, snow, mud, racing, all-terrain. Same with the anti-fatigue mats. You might have environments that have more liquids and need drainage holes. Maybe you have metal shavings. It kind of just depends. And we have all the different mats for each kind of environment. And tires tend to go flat as well. So you need to keep them at the correct pressure. And anti-fatigue mat can also compress. So you want to watch out for that.
So finally, on the tire analogy, we're also aware that there's different levels of quality of tires. You may be comfortable with, getting something that's more lower end, that's only going to do 30,000 miles. Yet you may want to make the better investment, get something that's going to last you 90,000. So just being mindful of what, not all things are equal when it comes to cost on anti-fatigue mats, because you're getting that extra life out of a more expensive mat. So keep that in mind. We obviously don't want anything like this to be used. If this was your car tire, you probably wouldn't get very far down the road without somebody getting hurt. Same with mats. Let's make sure they get looked after and that they're going to keep everybody safe. So next point here is some cleaning tips we wanted to share. That'll be the next section. So we often get questions about cleaning the mats, and we're very much in favor of that. Keeping them clean is a great way to extend their useful life. And how do we clean them? we like to say they can fit in with whatever your standard cleaning procedures are. Some people use, just sweep them. Some people pressure wash. Some people hose them down. Some people have floor scrubbers they use. And any method that you use regularly to clean the areas where these mats are being used is suitable. Even if it comes to chemical, with the 100 series mats, they're chemical resistant. So you can actually, as you see in the pictures here, you can use chemical to scrub those. Another question that we often get is about the yellow borders. And what we wanted to make a point on there is the yellow borders on the mats that we do. That's actually a solid yellow material. It is not a paint or a tape. It is solid yellow rubber. So if they do go dull, which they do over time, especially with a lot of dirt in the area, they can be brightened back up to their original state by washing them down or pressure washing, something like that. So maybe that could become part of a regular, maybe a monthly or quarterly routine where you're actually on a rotation cleaning the mats with some sort of solution to brighten those yellow borders back up. And it's not going to be something like a tape or a paint where it could wear off. It's always going to be bright if you bring it back to life. So just a little plug for our other brand here, AcroSan. You may be aware of it, but we also have a division, AcroSan, which is the cleaning supply division of AcroMat. So if you need help with any recommended chemicals, solutions, things to use on that type of thing, we're here to help on those. If you need, help with the cleaning kit, the brushes, the actual solutions, anything like that, we've got some resources that we can point you to there as well. So.
And just some more mat cleaning tips here. So with the mats, especially in the food industry, you want to ensure that they're completely dry before you're putting them back on the floor. Otherwise, any sort of moisture that gets trapped underneath there could harbor bacteria. So one way you can do that is we sell cleaning carts, as well as you can get them most places. And they're good to just hang the mats up there to just let them dry out. And then they also have drainage holes that allow you to easily hang them up there. And then we also have a mat that we can just do a hole in the corner that allows you to easily pick it up and hang as well. So that's another option we can do instead of doing the whole mat with drainage holes. And then a lot of companies like to color code their areas. So we sell the mats in terracotta, gray, yellow, and black, just to prevent cross contamination. We can do that in different areas.
It's good. So there's a lot of, we're aware that there's a lot of different industries represented on the call today, and we're keeping it fairly generic because of that. But if there's particular questions for your industry or your application you'd like us to address, feel free to send those in, and we'll get those covered off as well. So I think that's good what you're saying. Make sure they dry out, and make sure if you need the holes for hanging, that's also a great way to store them if they're going to be off the floor for a while, instead of just bunched up and left under a table or something. You can actually look after the mats this way by using some sort of a cart or storage system like that. So the next point to share with you is about how to care for the anti-fatigue mat. So we've covered off about the cleaning questions, and now we'll talk about the care. So how to look after the mats. One thing that may or may not be aware of is that we do have, for the 100 series mats that we make, we do have repair kits, and that's a great way to, much like a tire, you can repair a mat very inexpensively and add a lot more life to it. So an example of that, we had a client recently that was a $2,000 custom mat that they had put in about 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. And where the operator stood, there was 3 areas that had worn out to a point where it was no longer a safe mat for them. Instead of replacing that whole mat, they were able to actually just cut those sections out and replace those sections with new pieces. And that was about a $160 project to replace those pieces. So you can see how, for a very small investment, you can really bring that whole mat back to life, keep it safe, and extend the life of that mat for a long time. So the repair kit, just to touch on that, you may be familiar with those, but we have a repair kit that comes with the complete instructions on how to make a repair on the mat. And it also includes the adhesive that we use. This is the same factory adhesive that we use to bond the mats here. So you're going to get a good strong bond. And then we also have, you know, a little applicator that you can use as well. So this comes together in a kit. And then you can also just obviously buy the section of mat that you need to replace just a section or multiple sections in one mat. So great way to extend the life of these mats.
And another way to extend the life of the mats is rotating older mats into lower traffic areas. So you can still get some life out of them, and they're not going to be getting, you know, used as much as maybe a newer mat that you want to put into that high traffic area. So just a way to extend that. And then you want to remove any buildup from underneath the mat. Dust particles in the air that get trapped under the mat tend to make them slide and slip around on the floor. So you just want to make sure that that's not gathering on the ground and on the back of the mat. Then you want to avoid power equipment and chairs on the mats. They'll leave indents and kind of compress the mat over time. And especially with heavy equipment or carts that rest on the mats, it's definitely going to compress them and leave indents, and also create a tripping hazard when there's little dips in the mat.
It's good. So if you have something on there, you know, like a table leg or something, if it's an hour or two, it's not going to cause any issue. But if it's on there for weeks and months, that compression is not going to be able to come back out of the mat. So just be mindful of that. And then on the powered equipment, especially forklifts and powered lift trucks, those can really tear a mat quickly. So avoid those. And one way to do that when you're designing the mat is just keep a watch for how those traffic paths are. If you get regular powered equipment in an area, just design the mat so it doesn't interfere with that. Address rips and tears and damage quickly. We've already referred to that, but just make sure that if you do see something happen on a mat, just like if you get a flat tire, stop the car and attend to that damage. And it's going to give you more than that amount of time back in the long run. So attend to damage quickly. Ensure that your mats are used for the correct application, just like Barrett referred to earlier with the different types of tires. If you're in a mud race, you probably want a mud tire. Same with mats. Just make sure you're using the right mat for the application. You're going to get much longer life out of that as well. And last point on the care tips, you may or may not be aware, but we have a mat inspection checklist that can be a useful tool. We recommend you build that into your safety walks or your monthly audits or whatever that might be. And it's just a way to check off each mat to make sure it's up to the standard that you want, make sure there's no damage, if there's anything that needs to be repaired. So it's just a way to be proactive and keep those mats in top condition instead of just letting it wear out too soon. So with that, we'll jump into some questions. Looks like we might have a couple on the screen here. If there's any more, feel free to put those in. That's a good question. First one that we have here on the screen says, does the grip coat? So I'm not sure if everyone's aware of grip coat, but what that is our non-slip backing. You can see it on the back of the mat here. And that's a non-slip backing we apply to prevent mat movement. And the question is, does it also fit with standard cleaning procedures, or does it need to be reapplied? And that's a great question. It is safe to be washed. This is often used on entrance mats that get laundered regularly. So it is safe to be washed with the chemicals and the solutions. After maybe 20 washings or so, it may need to be reapplied. And in that case, you can just actually apply a new coat of it on the back of the mat, because you can actually buy the grip coat just in a can and reapply if it does wear out. So good question. It's not going to be a problem to wash the mats that have the grip coat. You just after a certain number of washings, you may need to reapply. And I guess the second question was the same one about the mats that have the grip coat on the bottom. So that's come in twice. Another question that we often get is about what we referred to earlier about rotating the mats. What does that look like? How do we do that? So just broadly on that topic, especially if they're standard size mats and you're needing to bring some new ones in to upgrade them, if they're still safe, if they're not causing any trip hazards, if they're still intact, and you may have an area of the facility that's low traffic, it's only got, a part-time operator there or something like that, then that doesn't have a mat yet, that can be a great way to extend the life of that mat, so you're not replacing everything at the same time. So you can think about that in terms of a rotation. The other rotation as well, if it's a standard mat, if you have an operator on maybe one end of the mat, you can actually turn that mat around and it may get more life out of it on the other end. So those are just a couple of tips on the rotation. One is rotate it to a different area, and number two is rotate it just around within the same area. So
what about with the custom mat, getting more life out of a custom mat that maybe you want to move to a new area?
So that's another good one as well. If you do have a custom mat, maybe the area has changed, or like Barrett saying, you want to move it to a different area. With the repair kit, you can repurpose, if any of that mat is still in good shape, you could get a section of the yellow border, which we sell on its own, just the yellow border pieces and a repair kit. And then you could actually reborder a mat and make it safe to use in a different area by repurposing some of that existing custom material. So as long as the material's in good shape, it can be repurposed elsewhere with the repair kits and the borders. So. And yeah, another question on the grip coat. Yes, we do sell that just by the can as well. So that,
Yeah, what is it, 32 ounces?
a 32-ounce can
Covers
correct.
about 100 square feet, I think.
Correct. Yep, that's correct. So looks like another question about how tight fit for the repair. So what we recommend there is measure out the area, go a little bit past the damaged area each way. So maybe it's a 2-foot square you need to, is damaged, go 2.5 feet each way. So you've got some extra room around the edge. And then we will send you that piece with the repair kit. When you get it, you can actually set that down on the mat, trace a line around the outside, and then cut the old section out. You want it a tight fit. Once you get that adhesive in there, it's going to be a snug, tight fit, all flush on the top. So. Looks like there's about it for questions. Any that we didn't answer live here today, we'll make sure and follow back up with you. And if there's any other questions as well that you want to ask, please feel free to do so. I didn't actually check, but I'm sure the link has been provided now for your free gift, which will be dispatched shortly. You can choose from a Yeti mug or a 2x3 mat or one of our measuring kits. So as a thank you for attending today. As always, we're here. If you have any questions, further training, feel free to bring that back to us. And one thing I wanted to say too is we love your feedback from these webinars. We learn a lot as well doing these sessions, especially from the questions. So please feel free to share your feedback, share your thoughts, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and thanks again for attending.
Thank you.